The USB drive arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked inside a manila envelope with no return address. Evan Lark turned it over in his hands, studying the simple piece of plastic that would destroy his marriage in the next 60 seconds. He slid it into his laptop without hesitation. The video file opened to shaky footage of a hotel room, expensive sheets, champagne bottles, and his wife Celia pressed against a man who wasn't him. The timestamp read 3 days ago, Saturday night, the night of Nia Granger's bachelorette party. Evan's coffee grew cold as he watched Celia laugh, kiss another man's neck, and stumbled toward the bed. The camera followed them, capturing everything with clinical precision. At the bottom corner, a text overlay appeared. Thought you should know. T. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. Evan, it's Theo Marsh, from Jefferson High. I was working the party Saturday night. Evan remembered Theo, quiet kid who got picked on until Evan stepped in junior year. Apparently Theo remembered too. Why? Evan asked, his voice steady despite the earthquake in his chest. Because you saved my life once, Theo said. Now I'm returning the favor. The call ended. Evan sat in his cramped insurance office, surrounded by claim files and fluorescent lighting, watching his marriage collapse in high definition. Celia appeared on screen again, whispering something to her lover that made him laugh. The man's face came into focus. Adrian Kearns from Celia's logistics company. Evan closed the laptop. 39 years old, and he was learning that everything he'd built was constructed on lies. But instead of rage, something colder settled in his chest, something calculating. He pulled out his phone and called his doctor's office. I need to schedule STD testing for my wife and myself, he said calmly. Today, if possible. Dr. Martinez delivered the results with practiced sympathy. Evan sat across from her desk while Celia shifted uncomfortably in the chair beside him. The good news is everything's treatable, Dr. Martinez explained. But you both tested positive for chlamydia. It's common, and with antibiotics— How? Celia interrupted, her voice pitched higher than usual. We've been monogamous for 8 years. Evan watched his wife's performance with detached interest. The slight tremor in her hands, the way she avoided his eyes. She was good, he'd give her that, but not good enough. Sometimes these things lay dormant, Dr. Martinez said diplomatically. The important thing is treatment. Celia nodded vigorously. Of course. Yes, we'll take care of it right away. They drove home in silence. Celia stared out the passenger window while Evan navigated Richmond's evening traffic. Their house sat in Windsor Farms, a neighborhood that screamed success to anyone driving by. Celia had insisted on it when her HR director's salary made the mortgage possible. Evan, she finally said as they pulled into their driveway, about the test results. These things happen, he replied, killing the engine. Like the doctor said. Relief flooded her face. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I love you, she said. I know, Evan said. That night he waited until Celia fell asleep before moving to his home office. He pulled up their joint bank account, credit card statements, and phone records. Everything he'd ignored for months suddenly made perfect sense. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started working out and buying expensive lingerie he never saw. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check her work tablet. She left it charging in the kitchen. Evan crept downstairs. Celia's tablet sat plugged in beside the coffee maker, password protected. He tried their anniversary. Nothing. Her birthday. Nothing. On impulse, he typed Adrian's name. The screen unlocked. WhatsApp was still open to a group chat titled Bad Girls Club. There were 4 members, Celia, Nia Granger, and 2 other women Evan recognized from their social circle. He began scrolling, unsure at first what he'd find, until the messages started painting a version of his wife he didn't recognize. One line caught his eye immediately. Evan's working late again, Celia had written. Perfect timing for Adrian. A devil emoji followed the message. Nia replied quickly. Girl, you're playing with fire. What if he finds out? Please, Celia had written back. Evan's too boring to suspect anything. He thinks I'm some saint who goes to book club twice a week. Evan kept scrolling, his thumb tense against the screen. A few lines down, Nia made her own confession. Speaking of playing with fire, Marcus and I hooked up again. 3 weeks before my wedding, lol. You're terrible, Celia had responded. Poor Declan has no idea what he's marrying. What he doesn't know won't hurt him, Nia said. Besides, once I'm Mrs. Vaughn with his trust fund access, I can do whatever I want. Evan blinked hard. The messages didn't stop. They only got worse. For months, the women had swapped lies, laughed at their partners, and shared details about secret affairs. Celia's messages stood out, too vivid to ignore. Told Evan I'm staying late for a client dinner, she'd written. Meanwhile, Adrian and I are booked at the Jefferson until midnight. Nia had replied, Girl, I swear you're going to end up on one of those true crime podcasts. Only if Evan ever grows a spine, Celia shot back. Which, not likely. His jaw clenched, but his hands moved with purpose. He screenshotted every message. Then came the most recent thread, just 3 days ago, right before the bachelorette party. One last wild night before Nia becomes a boring housewife, Celia had said. I'm bringing my friend Adrian. This party's going to be epic, Nia had replied. What happens in Richmond stays in Richmond. Evan read the words 3 times before slowly setting the tablet back where he'd found it. Upstairs, Celia was fast asleep, one arm stretched lazily across his side of the bed. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, she looked peaceful, beautiful, undeserving. He turned without a word and walked back to his office. At his desk, he opened a new browser window. It was time to learn everything he could about Adrian Kearns. Adrian was easy to research. LinkedIn showed a successful career in logistics, rising through the ranks at Cornerstone Transport Solutions. Married to Rebecca Kearns, a pediatric nurse. 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. The family lived in a modest suburban home in Mechanicsville, about 20 minutes from Richmond. Evan cross-referenced Adrian's social media with Celia's. They'd been careful. No public interactions, no tagged photos. But metadata told a different story. Location services showed them at the same restaurants, the same hotels, the same coffee shops on the same days for the past 6 months. His phone rang. Theo, again. Did you look at the video? Theo asked. I did. There's more. I recorded audio from the hallway. Your wife and that other bride, Nia, they were talking about their men, saying some pretty nasty things. Send it to me. The audio file arrived minutes later. Evan plugged in headphones and listened to his wife's voice drift through hotel room walls. God, Evan is so predictable, Celia was saying. Same boring routine every night, same boring job, same boring everything. Adrian makes me feel alive again. At least you know what you're getting, Nia replied. Declan's sweet, but he's basically a golden retriever with a trust fund. Zero backbone. I need a man who can actually take charge, you know? That's why we have our side pieces, Celia laughed. Best of both worlds. Boring stability at home, excitement when we want it. Exactly. And after I marry Declan, I'll have enough money to really do whatever I want. Maybe even leave Richmond entirely. Start fresh somewhere more exciting. What about Declan? What about him? He'll be heartbroken for like 6 months. Then find some other woman to worship. Men like him always do. Evan saved the file and leaned back in his desk chair. The house was quiet except for the hum of central air conditioning. Outside, Richmond slept peacefully, unaware that several lives were about to change forever. He opened a new document and began typing. Plans needed to be made, timelines established, resources allocated. Evan approached revenge the same way he approached insurance claims, methodically, thoroughly, and with an eye toward maximum payout. By dawn, he had a strategy. The next morning, Celia bounced into the kitchen wearing yoga pants and a sports bra. She kissed Evan's cheek while he ate breakfast and read the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Good morning, handsome, she said brightly. I was thinking we should plan a weekend getaway soon. Maybe Virginia Beach? We haven't had couple time in forever. That sounds nice, Evan replied without looking up from his paper. When were you thinking? After Nia's wedding, I'll be so exhausted from all the maid of honor duties. She poured coffee into a travel mug. Speaking of which, I need to run errands for the bachelorette party today. Final details, you know? Evan nodded. What time will you be home? Probably late. You know how it is with wedding planning. She grabbed her purse and keys. Don't wait up. Drive safe, Evan said. After she left, he made 3 phone calls. The first was to Tommy Rodriguez, a private investigator he'd worked with on insurance fraud cases. The second was to Janet Mills, a divorce attorney whose reputation for aggressive tactics was legendary in Richmond legal circles. The third was to his bank. I need to transfer some funds into a separate account, he told his personal banker. Something my wife can't access. Of course, Mr. Lark, how much are we talking about? Everything. By noon, Evan had secured a PI, retained counsel, and moved 90% of their liquid assets into an account Celia didn't know existed. His name was removed from their joint credit cards, and he'd begun the process of documenting every shared asset for potential division. Tommy called him at 2 p.m. I've got eyes on your wife, the PI reported. She's at Adrian Kearns' apartment complex. Been there about an hour. Get photos, video if possible. Already on it. This guy's pretty sloppy about covering his tracks. Parked right out front in broad daylight. Evan drove to his insurance office and spent the afternoon processing claims. Workers' compensation fraud, suspicious house fires, staged car accidents. The same patterns repeated endlessly. People thinking they were clever, not realizing that lies always left evidence. At 6 p.m., Tommy sent him a photo gallery. Celia entering Adrian's building. Celia at Adrian's window, clearly visible and laughing. Celia leaving 3 hours later, hair mussed and lipstick gone. Evan forwarded the photos to Janet Mills with a note. Documentary evidence, more to follow. Celia came home at 8:30, claiming she'd been shopping for wedding decorations. She showed him bags from Target and Bath & Body Works as proof. How did the errands go? Evan asked. Exhausting, but productive. Nia's so particular about everything. I swear, bridezillas are real. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed on their couch. How was your day? Quiet. Processed some claims, nothing exciting. She snuggled against him while they watched Netflix. Evan stroked her hair and made appropriate responses to her commentary about the show. She felt warm and familiar against his side. For a moment, he almost forgot about the photos on his phone. Almost. Thursday morning brought an unexpected gift. Evan was reviewing claim files when his office phone rang. Mr. Lark, this is Marcus Chen from Cornerstone Transport Solutions. I understand you handle insurance investigations? Evan sat up straighter. That's correct. What can I help you with? We have a situation with one of our senior analysts. Possible misconduct involving company resources. We need someone discreet to look into it. What kind of misconduct? The sexual maltreatment variety. An employee reported inappropriate behavior, possible quid pro quo situations. We need documentation before we can take action. Evan smiled. I'd be happy to discuss this further. Who's the employee in question? Adrian Kearns. Know him? Not personally, but I can certainly investigate objectively. They scheduled a meeting for Friday morning. Evan hung up and immediately called Tommy. I need you to dig deeper into Adrian Kearns' work situation. Specifically, any complaints, HR issues, or inappropriate relationships with colleagues. On it. Anything particular I should look for? Everything. This guy's about to have a very bad week. That evening, Celia announced she was having dinner with Nia to discuss final wedding preparations. We'll probably be late, she said, applying lipstick in their bedroom mirror. Wedding crisis mode, you know? Of course. Tell Nia I said, congratulations. Will do. Evan waited 30 minutes after she left, then drove to Adrian's apartment complex. Tommy had given him the address, and sure enough, Celia's Honda was parked outside Building C. He positioned himself across the street with a clear view of the entrance and settled in to wait. His patience was rewarded at 11:47 p.m. Celia and Adrian emerged together, holding hands and kissing goodbye like teenagers. She stayed pressed against him for a full minute before finally walking to her car. Evan photographed everything. When Celia got home at midnight, she found Evan reading in bed. How was dinner? He asked casually. Stressful. Poor Nia's having second thoughts about the flowers. We had to call 3 different vendors. She disappeared into their bathroom and emerged in pajamas, face washed clean of makeup. I'm exhausted. Sweet dreams, Evan said. She curled up beside him with a contented sigh. Love you. Love you too. Friday's meeting with Cornerstone Transport went better than Evan had hoped. Marcus Chen, the HR director, was desperate for help. Adrian's been with us for 5 years, Chen explained. Good employee, solid performance reviews. But 3 weeks ago, we received a complaint from one of our female coordinators. She claims Adrian offered her a promotion in exchange for sexual favors. Did she file a formal complaint? She was afraid to initially, but yesterday another woman came forward with similar allegations. We need to know if there's a pattern of behavior we've missed. Evan took detailed notes. I'll need access to personnel files, security footage, and the ability to interview employees confidentially. Done. When can you start? Immediately. Evan spent the afternoon at Cornerstone's offices, reviewing Adrian's employment history and interviewing colleagues. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd grown increasingly bold over the past year. Inappropriate comments, unwanted touches, pressure applied to female subordinates who needed favorable performance reviews. One woman, Sarah Kim, was particularly forthcoming. Adrian started getting weird about 6 months ago, she told Evan during a private interview. More aggressive, more entitled, like he thought he was untouchable or something. Did anything specific trigger the change in behavior? He started talking about this affair he was having. Some married woman who made him feel like a king, he said. Really boosted his ego, I guess. Evan nodded sympathetically. Did he mention this woman's name? Celia something. He showed me her picture once. Pretty blonde, looked like she had money. He was obsessed with her. Thank you, Sarah. This is very helpful. By 5 p.m., Evan had compiled a comprehensive report documenting Adrian's misconduct. He'd also installed a small recording device in Adrian's office, completely illegal but necessary for what came next. Celia was already home when he arrived, cooking dinner and humming cheerfully. Perfect timing, she said, kissing his cheek. I made your favorite. Chicken parmesan with pasta. She only cooked his favorite meal when she felt guilty about something. Smells amazing. What's the occasion? No occasion. Can't a wife make dinner for her husband? She poured him wine and sat across from him at their dining room table. So how was work? Any interesting cases? Just the usual fraud investigations. Nothing too exciting. I was thinking, maybe we should take that vacation sooner rather than later. Things have been so stressful with the wedding and work and everything. We could use some us time. Evan twirled pasta around his fork, considering her words. You seem stressed lately. Anything specific bothering you? Celia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Just the normal stuff. You know how demanding my job can be. And with Nia's wedding next week, she shrugged. It'll all settle down soon. I'm sure it will. After dinner, they watched a movie together. Celia fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, breathing softly against his neck. She looked peaceful, young, nothing like the woman he'd heard on that audio recording. Evan carefully extracted himself and went to his office. An email from Tommy was waiting with the subject line, pay dirt. The attached photo showed Adrian leaving work at 3 p.m. that afternoon, 2 hours early, and driving straight to a hotel in downtown Richmond. 30 minutes later, Celia's Honda pulled into the same parking lot. There were more photos. Adrian and Celia entering the hotel together. Adrian's hand on her lower back as they waited for the elevator. Timestamps showed they'd been inside for over 2 hours. Evan saved everything to a secure folder and began planning Phase 2. Saturday morning arrived gray and humid, typical for Richmond in late summer. Celia spent an hour getting ready for what she claimed was a dress fitting for Nia's wedding. I'll probably be gone most of the day, she told Evan. You know how these things go. Try on the dress, hate it, try on another dress, start over. Sounds exhausting. Need me to pick up anything while you're out? Just groceries if you get a chance. We're almost out of everything. She kissed him goodbye and left in a cloud of expensive perfume. Evan waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called Tommy. She just left. Where are you? Already following her. She's not heading toward any bridal shops, by the way. She's going toward Adrian's place. Stay on her. I need to know everywhere they go today. Evan drove to the grocery store as promised, but instead of shopping, he sat in his car and made phone calls. The first was to Rebecca Kearns, Adrian's wife. Mrs. Kearns, my name is Evan Lark. I'm a private investigator working on a case that involves your husband. Could we meet briefly? I have some information you need to see. Rebecca's voice was cautious but curious. What kind of information? The kind that explains why your husband has been working late so often recently. They met at a coffee shop in Mechanicsville. Rebecca was younger than Evan had expected, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and the slightly frazzled look of someone juggling career and small children. My husband's having an affair, she said without preamble after they sat down. That's why you called, isn't it? Evan nodded. I'm sorry, how long have you suspected? Months. He's been different, distracted, always on his phone. She stirred her coffee absently. I found hotel receipts in his car last week. Confronted him about it. What did he say? That it was work-related. Business meetings with clients? Rebecca laughed bitterly. I may be tired, but I'm not stupid. Who has business meetings at hotels on Saturday afternoons? Evan pulled out his phone and showed her one of Tommy's photos. Adrian and Celia entering the hotel yesterday. Her name is Celia Lark, he said quietly. She's my wife. Rebecca stared at the photo for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with tears. How long? She asked. At least 6 months that I can prove. Probably longer. God. She covered her face with her hands. The kids. How do I explain this to the kids? You don't have to do anything right now, Evan said gently, but I think we can help each other. Adrian's about to face some serious consequences at work. If you're planning to leave him, now would be a good time to protect yourself financially." Rebecca wiped her eyes and looked at him with new interest. "What kind of consequences?" Evan told her about the sexual maltreatment complaints and his investigation. He also shared some of the photos Tommy had taken. Nothing explicit, just evidence of the affair. "I want copies of everything," Rebecca said when he finished. "And I want him to pay for what he's done to our family." "I can arrange that." They spent another hour planning. By the time they parted ways, Rebecca had the name of a good divorce attorney and a promise that Evan would share any additional evidence he uncovered. Tommy called as Evan drove home. "Your wife and her boyfriend just checked into the Jefferson Hotel, presidential suite. They're planning to make a day of it." "Perfect. Get photos of them entering and leaving. Timestamps on everything." "Already on it." "Oh, and boss, they stopped at a jewelry store first. Adrian bought something expensive." Evan felt his first real flash of anger since this whole thing started. A jewelry store. Adrian was buying his wife gifts with money that should have been supporting his actual family. Which store? Schwarzschild, downtown. They were in there for about 20 minutes. Evan drove to Schwarzschild and had a brief, productive conversation with the sales associate who'd helped Adrian. A little name-dropping and some fabricated story about insurance verification was all it took to learn that Adrian had purchased a $3,000 diamond bracelet for Celia, using a credit card that was probably already maxed out if Rebecca's suspicions about their finances were correct. Evan sat in his car outside the jewelry store and felt something cold and final settle in his chest. This wasn't just an affair anymore. Adrian was making long-term investments in his wife, planning for a future that involved stealing her away from their marriage. Time to accelerate the timeline. He called Janet Mills, his divorce attorney. "I need to move faster than we discussed," he told her. "File the papers on Monday. I want her served at work, publicly, with maximum embarrassment." "Are you sure? We discussed the advantages of waiting to build a stronger case." "The case is strong enough, and I want this done before she has a chance to hide any more assets or make any more plans with her boyfriend." "All right. I'll have the papers ready." "What about spousal support?" "She won't be getting any. Trust me on that." Sunday passed quietly. Celia came home from her supposed dress fitting with shopping bags and a new diamond bracelet that she claimed was a gift from Nia for being such a wonderful maid of honor. "It's beautiful," Evan said, examining the bracelet. "Expensive looking." "Nia's family has money," Celia replied easily. "She wanted to get something special for all her bridesmaids." "That's very generous." They spent the evening watching Netflix and discussing mundane domestic issues. What to do about the leak in their guest bathroom, whether they should refinance their mortgage, plans for Thanksgiving with Celia's parents. Normal married couple conversations, except that Evan knew exactly how much the bracelet cost and who had really bought it. He also knew that by this time next week, they'd both be living somewhere else. Monday morning, Celia left for work in high spirits. "Big week ahead," she said, adjusting her lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Nia's wedding is Saturday, and I have that presentation to the board on Thursday. After this week, life should calm down considerably." "I'm sure it will," Evan agreed. At 10 a.m., a process server walked into Cornerstone Transport Solutions and asked for Celia Lark at the front desk. Evan knew this because he'd asked Tommy to be there with a camera. The photos arrived 20 minutes later. Celia's face frozen in shock as she read the divorce papers, her colleagues staring. The whispered conversations that followed as she hurried back to her office. Tommy's report came an hour later. She called Adrian immediately. "They're meeting for lunch to discuss the situation. Want me to record the conversation?" "Absolutely." At noon, Tommy positioned himself at a table near Adrian and Celia at a small Italian restaurant downtown. The recording device he'd planted in Adrian's jacket pocket the previous week, another completely illegal but necessary tool, captured everything. "This is a disaster," Celia was saying. "He knows everything. The divorce papers mention infidelity specifically." "How much does he actually know?" Adrian asked. "I don't know. But he's been so calm about everything, too calm. That's not like him. Maybe he's just processing it. Shocked, you know? Some guys shut down when they get emotional." "You don't understand," Celia said. "Evan doesn't get emotional. He gets strategic. If he filed for divorce, it means he has a plan. So what do we do?" "I don't know. My lawyer says I should try to reconcile or at least delay the proceedings. Buy time to figure out what he has on us." "F that. Maybe this is good news. Now we don't have to sneak around anymore. We can be together for real." There was a long pause. Then Celia's voice quieter. Adrian, I need to ask you something. Are you serious about us? About a future together? Of course I am. Why would you even ask that? Because you're still married too. And if we're both getting divorced, we need to know what we're dealing with financially. How much debt you have, what kind of assets. Don't worry about money. I've been putting things in place. Rebecca doesn't know about half my accounts. Another pause. Then Celia again. What accounts? Offshore stuff, cryptocurrency, cash positions she can't touch. I've been planning this for months, babe. When the time comes, we'll have options. Evan listened to the recording 3 times, taking notes. Adrian was hiding assets from his wife, possibly illegal, definitely useful for Rebecca's divorce case. More importantly, he was lying to Celia about his financial situation. According to Rebecca, Adrian was drowning in debt and had been borrowing against their house to fund his affair. Time for phase 3. Evan called Marcus Chen at Cornerstone Transport. I have my preliminary report ready on the Adrian Kearns investigation, he said. Could we meet this afternoon? There are some urgent findings you need to see. How urgent? Fire him immediately urgent. They met at 3 p.m. Evan presented a comprehensive file documenting Adrian's sexual maltreatment of multiple female employees, his use of company resources for personal activities, and his inappropriate relationship with a colleague in the HR department of another company, namely Celia. Jesus Christ, Marcus said, flipping through photos of Adrian and Celia together. She works in HR, director level, at Morrison Logistics. This is a liability nightmare. If word gets out that one of our senior analysts has been sexually maltreating employees and conducting an affair with an HR executive from another company. He shook his head. We could lose major contracts. I'd recommend immediate termination and a comprehensive review of his access to company systems and information. Done. Can you document everything for our legal team? Already prepared. Evan handed over a thick folder. This should cover any wrongful termination claims he might try to make. Adrian was fired at 4:30 p.m. Security escorted him from the building after confiscating his laptop, phone, and access cards. Evan knew this because he'd asked Tommy to watch from the parking lot. The photos of Adrian carrying a cardboard box to his car, looking stunned and angry, were deeply satisfying. At 5:15, Celia called Evan. Honey, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice shaky. Adrian got fired today. From his job. That's terrible. What happened? I don't know all the details. Some kind of HR investigation. They're saying he maltreated female employees. Wow, that's serious. It is. And with everything that's happening with us. She paused. Evan, can we talk tonight? Really talk? I think we need to discuss our marriage honestly. Of course. I'll pick up dinner on the way home. Thank you. I love you. I love you too. Evan hung up and smiled. Celia was finally ready to be honest. Unfortunately for her, it was far too late for honesty to matter. That evening, Celia paced the living room while Evan sat at the kitchen table, quietly eating Chinese takeout. She had changed into jeans and an old sweater, her comfort clothes, and kept running her fingers through her hair in nervous loops. I need to tell you something, she said for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Evan didn't look up from his food. I'm listening. It's about Adrian, about us. She stopped pacing and met his eyes. We've been having an affair for months. I'm sorry, Evan. I'm so sorry. Evan calmly set his chopsticks on the edge of the carton and turned his full attention toward her. How long? 6 months, maybe 7, she admitted, tears beginning to spill down her cheeks. It just happened. We were working on a project together and he was so different from... She caught herself, then continued. From what I'm used to. Exciting. He made me feel young again. I see, Evan said quietly. Celia blinked in disbelief. That's it? That's all you have to say? Rising from the table, Evan walked into the living room. Celia followed behind him, arms wrapped tightly around her torso like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. What do you want me to say? He asked without turning around. I don't know, she said. Scream at me? Get angry, something. She wiped her nose on the sleeve of her sweater and sank onto the couch. You're being so calm about this. Evan faced her, voice level. Would screaming change anything? No, she admitted with a shaky breath. But she let the sentence hang in the air before continuing. Evan, I want to make this work. The affair is over. Adrian's life is falling apart, and I don't want mine to fall apart too. We can go to counseling. We can figure this out. He took a seat in his reading chair across from her, his face unreadable. Is the affair really over? Yes, Celia said quickly. Completely. When was the last time you saw Adrian? Evan asked, tone calm but firm. She hesitated, just long enough to confirm what he already suspected. Last week. We were ending things. Which day last week? He pressed. Celia shifted uncomfortably. Why does it matter? Because I'm trying to understand the timeline, Evan replied. When exactly did you decide to end things with Adrian? There was a pause before she said, when I realized what it was doing to our marriage, when I understood that I was about to lose something real for something temporary. Evan nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting, because according to my private investigator, you were at the Jefferson Hotel with Adrian yesterday afternoon. Presidential suite. You also had lunch with him today after he got fired, where you discussed strategy for dealing with our divorce. The color drained from Celia's face. You've been having me followed? I've been documenting evidence for divorce proceedings. Yes. Evan? She started to stand up, then sat back down. How much do you know? Everything. The bachelorette party video, the STD you gave me, the WhatsApp messages where you and Nia mock your husbands, your workplace affair, Adrian buying you jewelry with money he stole from his family. Should I continue? Celia stared at him in horror. What video? Evan pulled out his laptop and played the footage from the hotel room. Celia watched herself kissing Adrian, laughing, falling into bed with him. When it ended, she looked like she might vomit. Who took this? Someone who thought I deserved to know the truth. Evan, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You made choices. Now you live with the consequences. Celia started crying harder. What consequences? What are you going to do? I'm going to let you destroy yourself. I'm just providing the tools. What does that mean? Evan closed the laptop and looked at his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, with something approaching pity. It means that Adrian has been lying to you about his financial situation. He's not hiding money from Rebecca. He's hiding debt. About $200,000 of it, according to my research. Credit cards, personal loans, a second mortgage he took out without Rebecca's knowledge. The affair with you has been expensive. Celia's crying began to slow, though her shoulders still trembled. That's not... He said he had offshore accounts, she whispered. Evan didn't flinch. He lied. Adrian is broke. Worse than broke. And now he's unemployed, facing multiple sexual maltreatment lawsuits, and going through a divorce where his wife knows about the hidden debt. Her head snapped up. How do you know all this? Because I've been talking to Rebecca, he said evenly. She's filing for divorce tomorrow. She's also reporting the hidden debt to the authorities as potential fraud. Celia stared at him in disbelief. You talked to his wife? We've become quite close, Evan replied. Betrayed spouses have a lot in common. Her expression shifted from shock to anger. Evan, this is crazy. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're angry. I'm not destroying anything, he said as he stood. I'm simply revealing what was already there. You and Adrian destroyed your own lives. I'm just making sure everyone else knows about it. There was a long pause. Then Celia looked up at him with pleading eyes. What about us? Our marriage? Our marriage ended the first time you slept with Adrian, Evan said flatly. Everything since then has just been paperwork. She sat in stunned silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, desperate. What do you want from me? What can I do to fix this? Nothing, he said, grabbing his coat. There's nothing to fix. There has to be something, she insisted. Money? I'll give you everything in the divorce. The house, my 401k, everything. Evan looked at her for a long moment, then said, I already have everything. Moved it to accounts you can't access. Her eyes widened in alarm. You can't do that. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, he replied coolly. I moved my assets to protect them from fraudulent claims, all perfectly legal. But the house, she started, is in my name only, Evan cut in. You signed a quit-claim deed 2 years ago when we refinanced, remember? You said it would be easier for tax purposes. Celia's face went white. You planned this, all of it. No, he said as he picked up his keys from the coffee table. I planned for this. There's a difference. He walked to the door without looking back. I'm going to a hotel tonight. You can stay here until the divorce is final. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. Her voice cracked as she asked, Where am I supposed to go? Evan didn't pause. That's not my problem anymore. Evan walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Celia? You might want to get tested again. Adrian's been sleeping with other women besides you. Rebecca found evidence of at least 3 affairs. He left his wife sobbing on their couch and drove to a Hampton Inn near the airport. The room was small and generic, but it was his. For the first time in months, Evan slept peacefully. Tuesday morning brought unexpected entertainment. Evan was halfway through his omelet at the hotel restaurant when his phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. "This is Nia Granger. We need to talk about the wedding." He stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "I'm not sure we have anything to discuss." Her answer came quickly. "I know you have something on me from the bachelorette party. I'll pay you to keep quiet." Interesting. Nia was panicking. Evan typed back a short response. "Meet me at Pearlie's Deli on Boulevard at noon." He spent the morning at his office, catching up on actual insurance work. Around 11, Tommy called with an update. "Adrian's having a bad day," the PI reported. "Rebecca changed the locks on his house. His credit cards are all frozen, and word's getting around about why he got fired." "Any word on where he's staying?" Evan asked, leaning back in his chair. "Cheap motel on Broad Street. One of those places that rents by the week. Oh, and his car got repossessed this morning." Evan allowed himself a grim smile. "Perfect. Keep an eye on him. I want to know if he tries to contact Celia." "Copy that," Tommy said before hanging up. Nia was already waiting when Evan arrived at Pearlie's Deli. She looked nervous, constantly glancing at her phone and scanning the restaurant like she expected paparazzi to burst through the door. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as he slid into the booth across from her. Evan folded his hands on the table. "What can I do for you?" "I know you have video from the bachelorette party," Nia said, lowering her voice. "I know it shows me with Marcus. I'll give you $10,000 to delete it." He raised an eyebrow. "Why would I want to delete it?" "Because you're angry at Celia, not me." Her voice was tight. "This doesn't have to affect my wedding." Evan studied her. She was beautiful in a polished, artificial way, impeccable makeup, designer clothes that screamed wealth, and jewelry that probably cost more than his car. Everything about her was curated for status. "When's the wedding again?" he asked casually. "This Saturday," she replied. "Declan's family is flying in from all over. We have 200 guests. The venue alone cost 40 grand. That's a lot of money," he noted. "It is," she agreed quickly. "And if you release that video—" She didn't finish the sentence. Evan tilted his head. "What exactly did you do at the party that you're so worried about?" Nia fidgeted in her seat. "I made some mistakes, poor choices, but they don't reflect who I really am." "What kind of mistakes?" he asked, pressing. "I was with Marcus. My ex-boyfriend." Her voice dropped to a whisper. We hooked up." Evan raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting her continue. "It was stupid," Nia said. "I was drunk, scared about the wedding, and he was there." "Just hooking up?" he asked pointedly. "We had sex," she admitted, her voice barely audible now. "In one of the hotel rooms. It meant nothing, just cold feet." Evan nodded slowly. "And now you're worried Declan will find out." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "He would die. Absolutely die. Declan's never even been with another woman. He thinks I'm this perfect person who's never made a mistake." She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "He's a good man. He doesn't deserve to be hurt like this." "You're right," Evan said. "He doesn't." "So?" She looked at him hopefully. "You'll delete the video?" "I'll think about it," Evan replied calmly. Her tone immediately sharpened. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Evan reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen and showed her a photo, not from the bachelorette party, but from Tommy's surveillance last week. "This was taken 5 days ago," he said. "You were at the Omni Hotel with Marcus for 3 hours." Nia stared at the screen, stunned. Why were you following me?" "I wasn't following you specifically," Evan said coolly. "I was investigating the web of affairs connected to my wife. You just happened to be one of the threads." "This is insane," she muttered. "You can't just spy on people." "I can investigate insurance fraud," he replied, unbothered, "which led to workplace misconduct, which led to infidelity, all perfectly legal." Nia looked down at the table. When she finally spoke again, her voice was hollow. "What do you want?" Evan didn't hesitate. "I want you to be honest. How long have you been cheating on Declan?" "Since we got engaged." 8 months. She covered her face with her hands. "Marcus and I have history. We dated for 2 years before I met Declan. When I got engaged, Marcus came back into my life. and I couldn't stay away from him. Why are you marrying Declan if you're in love with Marcus? Because Marcus doesn't have any money. The words burst out of her, loud enough to make other diners look over. She lowered her voice again. Marcus is a bartender. He lives in a studio apartment and drives a car that's older than I am. Declan has a trust fund. His family owns half of Henrico County. So, this is about money. It's about security. About having the life I want. Nia looked directly at him. You think that makes me a terrible person? I think it makes you honest. Finally. Will you delete the video? Evan considered her question. Nia was right. His fight wasn't with her. But she was also Celia's best friend and accomplice. More importantly, she was about to destroy a good man's life for money. No, he said finally. But I'll make you a deal. What kind of deal? Call off the wedding yourself. Tell Declan the truth about Marcus. Do it before Saturday and I'll keep the video private. Are you insane? I can't do that. Then I'll do it for you. Saturday morning, 1 hour before the ceremony, I'll hand Declan a USB drive with everything on it. Video, photos, timestamps. Let him decide whether he wants to go through with the wedding. Nia stared at him in shock. You would really do that? Destroy my wedding in front of 200 people? I'd be saving Declan from marrying someone who doesn't love him. Seems like a public service. This is blackmail. No, this is a choice. You can tell him the truth privately and try to work things out, or you can let him find out publicly and face the consequences. Nia was crying openly now, not caring about her makeup. He'll never forgive me. Maybe not, but he deserves the chance to make that decision. And if I don't tell him, then Saturday's going to be a very memorable day for everyone involved. Evan left her at the table and drove back to his hotel. He had calls to make and plans to finalize. The wedding was 4 days away, and he wanted to be ready for either outcome. Wednesday brought news from multiple fronts. The first call came early, from Rebecca Kearns. Adrian showed up at my work yesterday, she said without preamble. Security had to escort him out. He was screaming about how you'd ruined his life. Evan's tone sharpened. Are you safe? I think so, she replied. He's more desperate than dangerous right now, but I wanted you to know. He's getting unstable. I'll have someone keep an eye on him, Evan assured her. Any word on the divorce proceedings? My lawyer filed everything yesterday, Rebecca said. Adrian's going to be shocked when he realizes how much debt he's actually in. Turns out he's been hiding credit cards from me for years. How much are we talking about? Evan asked. Close to $300,000, she said bitterly, plus the second mortgage. He borrowed against everything we owned to fund his affair with your wife. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, weekend trips. I paid for my own husband's betrayal without even knowing it. Evan felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. He'll be financially ruined. Completely, Rebecca confirmed. And his lawyer says the sexual maltreatment lawsuits at work are going to be expensive too. He might have to declare bankruptcy. Good, Evan said simply. The second call came an hour later. It was Janet Mills, Evan's divorce attorney. Celia's lawyer wants to negotiate, she said. They're offering a 50-50 split of all assets if you'll agree to no-fault divorce proceedings. Evan raised an eyebrow. What's their leverage? They don't have any, Janet replied. Her lawyer knows she's in a weak position. The offer is pure desperation. Decline it, Evan said firmly. I want fault-based proceedings with full documentation of the infidelity, Janet sighed. That's going to be messy and public. I'm counting on it, he said. By midday, the third call came from Tommy, the private investigator. He's been trying to contact your wife all day, Tommy reported, calling, texting, showing up at her work. She's not responding. Interesting, Evan said. Maybe Celia's smarter than I gave her credit for. Or maybe she's just scared, Tommy offered. Word around town is Adrian's completely lost it, drinking heavily, making threats, talking about getting revenge on everyone who destroyed his life. Keep watching him, Evan instructed. If he gets dangerous, call the police. Will do. Oh, and boss, Tommy added, heard through the grapevine that Nia Granger's wedding might be in trouble. Rumors about the groom having second thoughts. Evan allowed himself a small smile. Really? That's interesting. At 3 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from Nia. I told him. About Marcus, about everything. The wedding's off. Are you happy now? Evan texted back. I'm proud of you for doing the right thing. Her response came within seconds. Declan won't even look at me. His family is furious. The vendors are keeping their deposits. I've lost everything. Evan didn't sugarcoat his reply. You've lost some money and some fake relationships, but you've gained your integrity back. Nia's final text was venomous. F you and your integrity. I hope you and Celia destroy each other. Evan didn't respond. He set the phone down, feeling a grim, quiet satisfaction that Declan Vaughn wouldn't be wasting his life on a woman who saw him as a bank account. Thursday morning brought the biggest surprise yet. Evan was checking out of his hotel. He'd finally decided it was time to find a more permanent apartment when his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Celia's name. He picked up immediately. Evan? It's me, she said, her voice shaky and uneven. Something terrible has happened. His stomach dropped. What is it? Adrian attacked me last night at my office, she said, barely holding it together. Evan froze, his hand tightening around the phone. Are you hurt? I'm bruised. Scared, Celia admitted, her voice cracking. He was drunk and angry, going on about how he'd lost everything. His job, Rebecca, his future. He blamed me for all of it. Where are you right now? Evan asked, already moving toward the exit. I'm at the police station. I filed a report. They're trying to track him down. I'll be right there, he said, without hesitation. When Evan arrived at the Richmond Police Department's downtown headquarters, he spotted Celia in the waiting area. She looked terrible, pale, exhausted, with a distinct bruise darkening her left cheek. Despite everything that had passed between them, seeing her like that awakened an instinct to protect her, one he thought he'd buried. He sat beside her and kept his voice calm. Tell me what happened. Celia looked down at her hands as she spoke. I was working late, finishing reports before the divorce hearings. Adrian showed up around 8. He was drunk, furious. He kept saying I'd ruined his life, that everything going wrong was my fault. Did he threaten you? Evan asked. Her eyes flicked to his. He grabbed me, shook me, said if he was going down, he was taking me with him. She touched her cheek gently. When I tried to get away, he punched me. Jesus, Celia, he murmured, fist tightening. She looked around nervously. Security showed up before it got worse, but Evan, her voice dropped, almost a whisper. He's not done. He talked about making everyone pay. You, me, Rebecca, even Nia. He's completely lost it. Before Evan could reply, Detective Maria Santos appeared at the door to the lobby. Mrs. Lark, she said, we'd like to go over your statement one more time. Celia nodded, standing. Of course. As Evan started to rise, Celia reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Stay, she pleaded. I know things are complicated between us, but right now I'm scared, and you're the only person I trust. He looked at her bruised face, her trembling fingers in his. Some part of him still cared, maybe always would. Okay, he said softly. I'll stay. The questioning was thorough. Detective Santos probed gently but firmly. When did the affair begin? Has Adrian ever been violent before? Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Celia answered quietly, without evasion. I've been staying at the house, but if Adrian knows where I live, we'll have patrol cars drive by regularly, the detective assured her. But given his mental state, it might be smart to find a temporary place to stay. Afterward, Evan and Celia sat in his car just outside the precinct. The silence stretched, heavy and awkward, until Celia finally spoke. Thank you, she said, barely above a whisper, for staying with me in there. Evan kept his hands on the steering wheel. You don't need to thank me. I do. Her voice cracked again. After everything I've done. She looked away as tears welled up. I've been so stupid, Evan. About Adrian, our marriage, everything. He opened his mouth to speak, but she held up her hand. No, let me finish, she insisted. I thought Adrian was exciting because he was dangerous. Turns out he was just dangerous. She gave a bitter laugh and wiped her face with her sleeve. You want the truth? The real truth? Evan glanced over. If you want to tell me. I was bored, she admitted. With us, with my life, with being a responsible adult. Adrian made me feel young and reckless and alive. She paused, then added, but young and reckless is just a nicer way of saying stupid and selfish. Evan didn't respond. What was there to say? Celia took a breath, steeling herself. I know it's too late. I know you'll never forgive me. But I want you to know, I do understand what I threw away. You're a good man, Evan. You deserve so much better than me. He looked at her, eyes unreadable. Where will you stay tonight? I don't know, she admitted. A hotel, I guess. My parents' place is 3 hours away. Evan considered his options. The smart thing would be to drop her off at a hotel and walk away. Let her figure out her own problems. But Adrian was dangerous, and Celia was still his wife, legally, if not emotionally. "You can stay at my hotel room tonight," he said finally. "I'll sleep on the couch. Tomorrow you can make other arrangements." "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to. But Adrian's unpredictable right now, and I don't want you getting hurt worse than you already have." They drove to the Hampton Inn in silence. Celia called in sick to work while Evan phoned Tommy and Detective Santos. Adrian was still missing, but his car had been spotted near downtown Richmond. "We need to find him before he hurts someone else," Evan told Tommy during one of the calls. Tommy's voice crackled through the line. "Police are on it, but this guy's got nothing left to lose. Makes him dangerous." That evening, Evan and Celia ordered room service and sat on the bed, watching the news. It felt surreal. Two people once in love, now clinging to routine in a place that wasn't home. During a commercial break, Celia broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" Evan muted the TV. "Sure." She didn't look at him when she spoke. "When did you know? About Adrian?" He leaned back against the headboard. "The day you got tested for STDs. Your performance in the doctor's office was convincing, but not perfect." Celia's eyes widened. "You knew for weeks and didn't say anything?" "I was gathering evidence, making plans," Evan said flatly. "Plans to destroy me?" she asked, her voice hardening. He turned to face her. "Plans to protect myself. Everything else was just consequences." "Fair enough," she murmured, then fell silent for a moment. The weight of everything unspoken settled between them. Finally, she asked, "What happens now? With us, I mean?" Evan kept his gaze steady. "The divorce goes through. You figure out your life. I figure out mine." "And Adrian?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Adrian faces the consequences of his choices, same as everyone else." By Friday morning, they had their answer. Evan's phone rang at 7 a.m. He picked up and heard Detective Santos on the other end. "We found him," she said. "Adrian Kearns. He's been arrested." "For attacking Celia?" Evan asked, sitting up straighter. "Among other things," Santos replied. "Turns out he's been busy. Broke into his ex-wife's house, stole jewelry and electronics, tried to use Celia's credit card at 3 different stores. Also left some threatening voicemails for his former boss." Evan let out a breath. "Is he going to jail?" "Oh, yes," Santos confirmed. "Multiple felony charges. He won't be bothering anyone for a long time." After hanging up, Evan turned to Celia, who sat at the small hotel table nursing a mug of coffee. "Adrian's been arrested," he said. Relief washed over her face. "Thank God. What for?" "Breaking and entering, theft, credit card fraud, making terroristic threats. He's going to be in jail for years." "Years?" she repeated, eyes wide. "He's facing federal charges for the credit card fraud, plus whatever Virginia adds for everything else." Celia stared down at her coffee, her voice soft. "So it's really over. All of it." "The criminal stuff, yes," Evan said. "Our divorce still needs to be finalized." "Right, the divorce." She glanced up at him, eyes glistening. "I know this sounds crazy, but part of me wishes we could start over. Pretend none of this happened." "We can't," Evan said, not unkindly. "I know," she replied, "but if we could, would you want to?" He paused, taking in the woman across from him. Still beautiful, still intelligent, still capable of laughter when she wasn't pretending to be someone else. But she was also the woman who'd betrayed him for 6 months, who'd handed him an STD, who'd laughed about him behind his back. "No," he said finally. "I wouldn't." "Because you can't forgive me?" "Because I can't trust you," he explained. "And without trust, we don't have anything worth rebuilding." Celia nodded slowly. Tears welled again. "I understand. I hope you do," Evan said. "And I hope you learn from this." She gave a bitter laugh. "What am I supposed to learn? That cheating is wrong? I already knew that." "No," Evan said, rising from the bed to pack his overnight bag, "that actions have consequences, that other people aren't just supporting characters in your story, that when you hurt people, they might hurt you back." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is that what this was? You hurting me back?" Zipping his bag, Evan paused and looked at her one last time. "No," he said firmly. "This was me refusing to be a sufferer. There's a difference." 6 months later, Evan stood in the parking lot of Richmond International Airport, saying goodbye to a life he'd never wanted to leave but couldn't bear to stay in. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. Celia had gotten a lawyer who specialized in damage control, but there wasn't much to control. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and Virginia's infidelity laws were unforgiving. She'd ended up with almost nothing: some clothes, her car, and enough money to start over somewhere else. Adrian was serving a 7-year sentence in federal prison. Rebecca had gotten a divorce, sold their house to pay his debts, and moved with the kids to North Carolina to be closer to her family. She'd sent Evan a Christmas card thanking him for helping her escape what she now realized had been an abusive marriage. Nia had left Richmond entirely after her wedding scandal. Last Evan heard, she was working as a real estate agent in Charlotte and dating a man who didn't know about her history with Marcus. Some people never learned. Declan Vaughn had sent Evan a bottle of expensive scotch with a note. "You saved my life. If you ever need anything, call me." He was apparently dating a nurse from VCU Medical Center who shared his interests in hiking and volunteer work. Real interests, not the fake ones Nia had performed for his benefit. Flight 447 to Denver is now boarding all passengers. Evan picked up his carry-on bag and walked toward the gate. He'd taken a job with a Denver-based insurance company that specialized in complex fraud investigations. Better pay, better title, better life. A chance to start over in a place where nobody knew his story. His phone buzzed with a text message. The sender was listed as unknown, but he recognized the number. "Heard you're leaving town. Good for you. I hope you find happiness wherever you're going. I'm sorry for everything." See, Evan read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations didn't need to continue. As the plane lifted off from Richmond, Evan looked down at the city that had been his home for 15 years. From 30,000 feet, it looked peaceful, orderly, like a place where bad things didn't happen to good people. But Evan knew better now. Bad things happened everywhere, to everyone. The trick was deciding how to respond when they happened to you. Some people became sufferers. Some people became villains. And some people, if they were smart and patient and willing to think strategically instead of emotionally, became survivors. The plane banked west toward Colorado, toward mountains and snow and a future that belonged entirely to Evan. For the first time in months, he smiled. 3 hours into the flight, his phone buzzed with a notification from his banking app. His investment account had hit a new milestone. Enough money to buy a house in Denver's foothills with a view of the Rockies and room for the dog he'd always wanted, but Celia had refused to get. Money that had once been theirs was now entirely his. Money that Celia had helped earn through her HR salary, but had forfeited through her betrayal. As the flight attendant offered him a drink, Evan pulled out his laptop and began researching dog breeds suitable for mountain living. German Shepherds looked promising, loyal, intelligent, protective, everything his ex-wife hadn't been. The plane flew through scattered clouds toward a setting sun, carrying Evan away from Richmond, and toward a life where he'd never again have to wonder who was lying to him or what he didn't know about the people he trusted. Some might call what he'd done to Celia and Adrian excessive, cruel even. But Evan preferred to think of it as educational. He'd taught them that actions had consequences, that betrayal had a price, that some men, when pushed too far, would push back harder than you ever imagined possible. It was a lesson he hoped they'd remember for the rest of their lives. Below him, Virginia disappeared into darkness, taking with it the last chapter of Evan Lark's old life. Ahead lay Colorado, possibility, and the kind of peace that only came from knowing you'd fought back against the people who tried to destroy you, and won.